G'day legends, James Greenshire from Resilient Leaders Foundation here. We just finished a tutorial call with our 12-month program on, funnily enough, the actual message of forgiveness. And it was a massive tutorial for the group to go through, even though they're 11 months into the program. It's still, forgiveness for a lot of us is still a very, very deep thing to uncover and to actually have a look at. And if you think about it, one of the reasons is because forgiveness, a major component of forgiveness is emotional. So we think that I can simply forgive, but if we do that, so often we don't acknowledge and honour the feelings in which have become attached to us during the process of the relationship with the person or the situation and the event. So if we're not willing to go into those feelings, we'll never actually be able to fully forgive. And you might have heard it before, I can forgive but I can't forget. That's a load of rubbish. You're not forgiving at all. Because if you were to truly forgive, then you'd be able to completely allow yourself to forgive, to forget. I often talk about my incident being hit by a roadside bomb. One of the only reasons why I remember it so well is that I use it in the work that I do. But the details of it is sliding well away. And come the anniversary of it, my family remember it far more than I do. And quite regularly I'll go past the day not even realising it was the anniversary. So this is the thing, when you do the inner emotional work, you can allow yourself to not only reframe, but also process and grow from the emotion that you've experienced. And therein lies what realistically are two key components of forgiveness. Firstly, a reframing of the situation so that you can have a different viewpoint of it, which doesn't fill up your emotional buckets, doesn't stir you up or trigger you anymore. And then the second part is that you've got to release the emotional bucket, because from the time of incident to the time of attempting forgiveness, you've been filling up your bucket of anger, resentment, all the other stuff, shame, guilt, you name it. So when we don't release that bucket, because of the memory is tied to emotion, it brings us back to that moment in time constantly. So we've got to release that and actually listen to the message the emotion has been trying to teach us. And there are many people that have tried to forgive too quickly because they haven't got the actual message of the emotion yet, which means they'll struggle to forgive, and forgiveness it'll be a cursory suggestion and there'll be no real heartfelt meaning. Forgiveness comes from the heart space, not the head. That's a massive thing to understand. And parents, you would have seen before, you'd tell your young child to say sorry for what you did, and they say sorry, and you know they're just saying sorry, but they don't really understand why they're saying sorry, and they're just saying it. And then the other child is going, oh, okay, then I forgive you. But they're just saying the words. There's no feeling to it because they're not understanding it. And that's because we're trying to calm something down, which realistically is not meant to be calmed down. Look at the ancient Egyptian mythological story of the Battle of the Nile between Horus and Seth. Now, Seth was the uncle of Horus who killed his father and killed Horus's father. Now, there's a figure called Hermes, or in Egyptian mythology it's called Thoth. Now, Thoth is said to be the scribe of the gods, represented in Roman mythology by Mercury. He travelled between both parties constantly, getting the armies back into the battlefield, doing first aid and getting them back prepped to go and fight again. And he then went to the other side and did exactly the same, and then other and backwards and forwards, until there was a complete exhaustion of the fight. And then, and only then, could Thoth amicably bring together a lasting peace. Why? Because the emotion, remember, mythology is an outward story for an inner reflection. It means that the emotion has been processed to the point where reason can come in and enter, hence the reframing. But if we don't honour the emotion, we'll completely miss it. But if we're going to hold on to this emotion, which so often will be bitterness, resentment, anger, disgust, on the flip side, shame and guilt, if we hold on to this, who's the only person who's suffering? You might say they are. That's an externalization, dude. And own it. You're feeling the emotion. Now, anger's been directly linked to this. The suppression of anger has been directly linked to a number of things. Firstly, the biggest killer in Australian society still cardiovascular disease. And secondly, cancer. Why? It turns up the pH of our cells to a place of positive 30 millihertz. And above that is an acidic range, and cancer is allowed to perpetuate for numerous reasons. You can do the research, it's all good. So what's this specifically saying? Well, it's emphasizing what Lord Buddha knew 2,500 years ago, probably the best psychologist ever to walk the face of the planet. And what he said was, resentment is like taking a pill of poison and expecting it to kill your enemy. If you harbor resentment, if you say, I cannot forgive you, then you toxify your system. Is there anything wrong with that? No, you just get your results. So this is the big thing, is there is no right, wrong path here. What I'm simply suggesting to you is, if you hold on to the resentment, to the toxicity within your system, you're the one who's actually hurting because of this. So not only in the process of forgiveness do you open yourself to see like your relationship with that person in a different way, but the world possibly in a different way, you actually liberate your internal system through the internal combustion being released from your system. And it's palpable. When you fully forgive, you'll come to this place where you'll receive a gift. And that gift will be one of a number of things: compassion, humility, love, honor, a deep level understanding. These are all heart states. And they come from here, not here, which is why forgiveness is a place from the heart, not the head. So that's why it has those two components. The head component allows us to see or perceive the situation from a different angle. And the heart component allows us to move through the emotion to the point where we'll completely be able to look at that person from a different angle. I shared a video the other day on forgiveness, and I talked about a situation where I confronted an old boss of mine. And it wasn't until I sat in front of him and looked at him and he responded in anger towards me that I saw that young, abused 8-year-old boy in front of me, and all I could feel was compassion. And then, funnily enough, instantaneously his anger dispersed, because compassion can't meet anger, or anger can't meet compassion. They're on two completely different levels. So a person can try and get angry all they want at you, but if you stay in compassion, it means you see what's happening. You see the wound, the pain that person's in. On Friday night, I was just about to go into a sound healing here in Mullumbimby, and a guy pulls up, gets out of his car, and he's really like on edge. I said, "G'day, mate, how are you?" And he's going, "Oh, I just had this incident on the main street, and this guy was yelling and abusing me, and he's just like tailed me all the way up here. He was like crazy." Lo and behold, that guy pulls up behind his car and starts taking photos and starts yelling abuse across the road. Now, the guy next to me who had just been speaking, let's call him John. So John just goes, "What the, mate? Just let it go, just let it go." And this guy, who was in his 70s, really thin, gaunt, white hair, massive sore on his nose, open wound, he just starts yelling and abuse. And he starts coming over saying, "I'm going to throttle you." Now, I haven't been in a situation where I was prepared to stand between a fist fight for a long time. However, there was no need when you see what's going on for this other person, this older person who's coming across and yelling. He's obviously in pain. And not only that, he's not feeling heard or seen. So I stood there very firmly and I said, "Mate, are you feeling heard right now?" Now, simply by saying that, it changed the way he was confronting in the situation. He wasn't going to therefore continue on into a fist fight. Something clicked in the back of his mind. Did the anger dissipate straight away? No, he still was heated. However, he changed his course of action. Why? Because I'm calling, with compassion, I'm calling the causal issue. He's in pain. I see you. I know what your pain is. You're a man who feels you're not heard, so you will rebel against society and claim that you're an underdog. And that is your course. But right now, does it need to go in any further? So when we allow ourselves to, in a moment, see through the eyes of compassion, we can really see to the causal issues of what's going on in front of people, and we don't even need to come to a place of forgiveness, because there is nothing to forgive. In my work, I have a lot of people use me because of my energy to heal. And you know, a lot of women will like look at me and go, and that because of their masculine wound, and so they throw a lot of stuff in my direction. But the thing is, it doesn't stick because it's not mine. So when they come around and they say, "I'm sorry, can you forgive me?" I said, "There's nothing to forgive. I only love you, and I'm honoured that you would actually be able to use me and my energy to help yourself heal." That's a really honoured place to be, and I take that with deep humility and reverence. So there is nothing for me to forgive. When we allow ourselves to come through the wound to this place of understanding and this centered place from a heart state of compassion or love or humility and honour, all gratitude, massive gratitude, all grounding energies, we remain centered. Which brings me on to the last point I want to mention. One of the hardest things to do is to forgive ourselves. But if we don't forgive ourselves, then the gateway so the toxicity of shame and guilt will really affect us. And those two are the biggest killers in the world right now. It is not suicide for 15 to 44-year-olds males in Australia. Suicide is an action taken by someone who is numb or is in too much pain to deal with anymore. Either or, it's the same thing, different side of the coin. And shame and guilt are the coin. And we've become an emotionally illiterate society, and this master's tutorial that we were just doing brought this whole thing up because we were confronting shame in all its regalia and guilt. Now, shame is about my own identity. It means that I've identified myself as not enough, not worthy, or being rejected. And guilt's about dependency or authority. It means I have judged myself through the use of someone else or something else as not good, one of those three things again, but bad. Yeah? Just think what happens when you go to a court of law and you're judged as wrong. You are immediately found guilty by who? By a group of your peers. Shame is a social emotion. So not only are you wrong, but your identity, because we've attached our doing to our being, your identity is therefore less than, is wrong, and is subjugated to something else, to another, dependent on someone else's authority. So guilt's a beautiful emotion that's telling us to stop, look around at the collateral damage that you've caused and sort that shit out and then get back on my path. And shame is saying, stop, James, stop, dude. If you go any further down this path, dude, you're going to violate every inner code you've got. Stop, get back on path. They're beautiful emotions until we toxify them by suppressing them. And then we hold on to them, and then they are killers. They are literally killers. And I know, because I have had to go deep inside, and they're the bigger demons than I ever faced on a battlefield, and they took more effort to actually go into and redeem and forgive within myself these things. But the liberation that I feel afterwards enables my relationships with the people that I felt so ashamed and guilty for the actions that I took in the past. That these relationships have now been able to be rebirthed in a different way I never saw possible. So much stronger, so much more open, so much more transparent. Why? Because the guilt and the shame aren't there. And that's the thing. The guilt and the shame will make us act in ways of complete opaqueness, complete lack of transparency, because we're trying to be something else to the world. We don't want the world to see our true self because we've judged our true self as less than. And yes, with a Christian society, unfortunately, because of this thing called the original sin in Genesis, the fall, then that's added to us. And you might say, I'm not a Christian. It's in our psyche. If you know anything about collective consciousnesses, you'll understand that has been a massive impact in exoteric Christianity. Esoteric Christianity simply see the fall as our incarnation into physical matter, which allows for us to actually see the world in a very different way. If you want to take this even further, look at the Nag Hammadi texts found in 1945, which are all about the Gnostic Gospels, which is a small version. I should be forgiving the Mozzie instead of hitting it, shouldn't I? Practice what you preach, James. Which is Gnosticism, which is one of the first forms of Christianity. And some of those Gospels that weren't allowed into the Bible by the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, they weren't allowed, but they talk about Christ actually coming, not for the forgiveness and washing away of sin, but the redemption and the washing away of ignorance. Funny if you spin that round and look at the world. How often is ignorance the reason why we blame or we externalize something onto another person? Letting go of ignorance and seeing through a heart space of compassion, which is realistically age of what Christ came for, teach love, heart space. So if we look through love or compassion, maybe we'd actually be a little bit less ignorant. Trust you got something from it. Remember, forgive yourself. You hurt yourself if you don't. And you're the only loser there. And not only that, if you lose from that, everyone else is going to lose too, because you're not getting the best of you. Trust you got something from it. Much love.